Tell Me More with me, CJ Quarterbaum. Tell Me More is a place for people who are curious about life. We talk about three big things on this channel: Gen Z, leadership, and preparing for the future. We took a break at the end of 2024, and here we are back today, where I want to talk to you about the 5 values of Gen Z. And I'm going to give you a 6th, a bonus one that wasn't on the Substack. Now, the reason I want to talk about their top 5 values is because if we are going to educate a group of people, connect with them, if we're going to manage them, lead them, if we want to understand them, then we have to know the things that make up who they are. Now, I am generally speaking a person who hates painting with broad strokes, right? I'm the person who says, don't put me in a box. Don't say to me that because everyone else like me is like this, then I must be like that too. But trends are important. They help us understand things. So while I'm painting with broad strokes here, and this might not apply to every single member of Gen Z, it is important for us to recognize that these are some of the things that consistently come up over and over for this generation. Gen Z is not a monolith, but consensus matters. So here we are. Top 5 values of Gen Z, with a bonus one coming at the end if you stick it out all the way through. First one is authenticity. If there's anything that Gen Z wants from us, it is for us to be real. Gen Z is asking that we would show up real, that we would not lie to them, that we would not come in with the selling them a bill of goods or facades or putting on these masks in order to present, I would say, our best self. What they want to know is that the person in front of them is real, they are honest, they are authentic. I have found in my experience that if you are just real with them, even if they don't like what you have to say, they will respect that so much more. This is a generation that we would call digital natives. A lot of them went through puberty on social media in a world full of filters and fakes and people presenting their highlight reels that they were often comparing to their behind the scenes footage. This generation is saying to us, hey, if you just show up real as who you are, yourself, I can respect that. And so number 1 value, authenticity. Number 2 value is diversity. Gen Z is the most diverse generation on record. They are that first generation that would push America into being a majority minority country, which we can get into that some other time, majority minority. But this generation has experienced more interracial dating and interracial babies. The most Spanish-speaking population that this country has seen. This generation has the most LGBTQ plus identifying folks in it. So when we look at this generation, they expect a diversity of perspectives. Leadership in this country has often looked one way: straight white males. And I don't say that to demonize straight white males as though they're this evil group of people, but the truth is, historically, they have dominated the conversation. They have set the path and the agendas. And Gen Z is coming in and saying, we want to hear from more voices. We want to hear from those who historically have been marginalized. And so for them, they don't want to work for companies where everyone at the top looks the same. They don't want to hear from voices that are the traditional perspectives that we have always heard from. A part of the reason I left finance when I was in my 20s is that every single bank that I worked at or financial institution, I saw that the higher up you went, the whiter and more male it got. And so I saw that there was a ceiling for me, and I had to make a decision that I want to grind away to possibly just get to the bottom of the middle, or did I want to strike out on my own and chart my own path to the top. Gen Z is coming in and they're not waiting to their 20s to ask that question. They want to hear from more voices now, more voices that they feel like represent them and who they are in all of their identities. Third one is flexibility. This is a generation that grew up mobile, between smartphones and iPads and a lot of them having to experience school via Zoom because of COVID. This generation is like, yo, we're not trying to be tied down. This idea of showing up in the office to do a job that I can do from home 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, they're not with that. And on some level, I respect that, right? One of my top values is flexibility. As I looked for jobs, I didn't want somewhere that was going to have me sitting in one spot all day, every day, especially when it was unnecessary. Because of the way technology changes so rapidly, this generation is also wildly adaptable. And so for them, they need flexibility. They need people who can work with them and can work for them and can be flexible and adaptable to whatever is changing in their worlds and landscapes. Number 4, mental health. Now, I don't know if I would define this as a value, so to speak, but it is a chief characteristic of this generation. We have to recognize that this generation has reported being more anxious, more depressed, more lonely, just across the spectrum of mental health issues. They are reporting it at higher rates than any generation that has come before them. And if that is true, then that means we need to know how to speak to them. We need to understand what it is that they are going through and they are facing, and what that means for the person who shows up in our classroom, or the person who shows up in our boardroom, the person who we have just hired fresh out of college and now need to manage. All of these things matter. So if we want to connect with and educate this generation well, at least getting a cursory understanding in mental health is going to go a long way. 5th value, skepticism. This is the generation who grew up where some of the first things they heard about were Occupy Wall Street. This is a generation that has found that the way that other generations just previously trusted institutions who lied to them, institutions who didn't have their best interest at heart, that they can't trust them. As a millennial, we really got the short end of the stick when it comes to this whole for-profit college model and seeing what the student loan debt crisis has done. Well, Gen Z was right behind us, looking at us and thinking to themselves, oh, I want no parts of that. They're going through this. We were told as a millennial, you work hard, get an education, and then you will be rewarded. And Gen Z looked at that and they said, you sold them some lies that have not come to fruition. How do we know we can trust you? How do we know we can trust you when you're telling us that these foods are good for our health, when in reality, these are the things that have been leading to disease? How can we trust you when you say that your organization has our best interest at heart, but in reality, what you do in February and June is you blackwash and you rainbow wash everything, but you don't actually care about these people? So Gen Z comes in with just a certain amount of mistrust for institutions and leadership and organizations of all kind. And if we want to get the best out of them, then that means those of us who are leading and managing and running places and things, we got to work a little bit harder to win their trust, to let them know, no, this is a place that you are valued, you're wanted, you're accepted. And all of your skepticism, I hope that I can earn your trust in such a way that you will leave it at the door. Now, I did promise you one more, a bonus one, and it's fear. Fear, I would say, is this 6th big marker of Gen Z. So much fear and anxiety grips this generation. The future, the present, they don't know what to do with all of the uncertainty. This generation is struggling and they're worried. If you poll Gen Z, a lot of the things that come up is how much this generation fears climate change. So many of them are not getting married and having children because they don't think there is going to be a world to bring them into. But they also have fear of these institutions. They grew up, a lot of them, the divorce rate is 50%. They grew up watching a lot of bad and failed marriages. I think this generation is the highest rate of children of divorce. And they don't know if they can trust that. They don't know if they can trust that this job is going to take care of them and because it's a social contract, right? I work for you, you take care of me, mutual benefit. They don't know if they can trust that these jobs will do that based on what they've seen. They don't know who or what they can trust. And then they look within themselves and they think, well, I'll just trust me. But in reality, we fail ourselves, don't we? In reality, we like to believe that, oh, I can be the captain of my own ship. But you look throughout human history and you will find that we make terrible gods, that we are not the ones in whom all of the answers lie within ourselves. And I know Stoicism, which is a really popular movement right now, tells us to just look within for the answer. But I don't think the answers are found within. And as Gen Z tries to trust in themselves more than they trust anything else, they're finding the weakness of the human condition. And this leads to even more fear. So how do we assuage those fears? How do we allay those concerns? How do we come around them in such a way and create environments of safety and security to help them flourish? Know who's walking into your classroom. Because I think if we're really paying attention we'll see they're not that different from the rest of us, especially us millennials and you Xers as well. I would like to say that Gen Z, they're kind of our spiritual children. They're simply picking up the torch that we put down and they're carrying it, because so many of these conversations started with us. We're all looking for reality these days. We're all tired of the fake. I love this movement of celebrities and influencers really trying to post real life and not the filters, not all the makeup, not the surgically repaired bodies. But hey, this is just who I am. This is life. I love when I see the fitness influencers, especially those around my age, and they're like, no, this is just what a body looks like. You don't need the filters. You don't need the surgery. You don't need the Photoshop. This is real life. I think that there's a good number of us who are championing diversity, who do want to see more, not just more people at the table, but actually eating. Because what I've experienced is often they want my face. They don't want my voice. But Gen Z's pushing back really hard against that. The world is changing. Flexibility is a good thing. Why be tied down when you don't have to be? I appreciate that I can work from anywhere in the world. I had a job for several years where I pretty much got to craft my own schedule. It was, hey, get your job done and then whatever, show up in the office every now and then. And I went from that to a job where they wanted us in the office 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And there was honestly no reason for it. And on the third day there, after several years of having supreme flexibility, I looked around and I said, y'all do this every day? Y'all are here all the time? For what? And it was one of those places with a real seat time culture. So even if you wrapped up your work early, it was expected that you would just be in your seat until that final moment. That's just not for me. I'm way past that point in my life. I want to be able to work from whenever and wherever, as long as I can get it done. That's good. The growing awareness of the mental health crisis has many of us digging deep into our childhoods and into who we are and trying to find answers. Because while we look at Gen Z and we go, hey, they're really anxious, they're really depressed, they're really lonely, it's not just them, it's all of us. As a whole, we are all more lonely, more anxious, more depressed than we have ever been. And it is time for us to find some answers, for us to get to the root of this, for us to heal some of that generational trauma that tends to make up our families and our cultures and our histories. This is not a bad thing. It is a hard thing. It sucks. I read this book last year, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, and that was hard. So worth it. The deep mistrust of institutions has been a long time coming. While Gen Z might have been coming up in those formative years where Occupy Wall Street, it was millennials who were the ones protesting. When we been told our whole lives that Social Security wasn't going to be there, and yet we've been paying into it since the day we started working, it makes sense when people don't trust their institutions. Millennials were the first generation to be told that it is highly unlikely that we were going to be able to surpass our parents. And that has borne out true. And so all of this shows that there's a certain kinship that we share with Gen Z. And now we're with them. Now we're managing them and we're leading them and we're educating them. And so I think it is best for us to help them figure out the paths that we've already walked. None of us survived this life alone. None of us can do it by ourselves. And if we're honest, so many of us got to where we are because we've had the help of people older than us reaching down and saying, hey, let me help you navigate this path. So why wouldn't we do the same for them? Join me as I continue this conversation on Gen Z, on who they are. I'm joined on the podcast this week by Dr. Sharice Taylor. Check out that conversation. It's actually a 3-parter, and it's the beginning is about Gen Z and education and leading them. So tune in this Friday as it drops, and I'll see you next time as I ask you to tell me more. Oh, real quick. If there's anything you think I missed in terms of values about Gen Z, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you're a member of Gen Z and you're saying, hey, these actually don't identify me, I'd love to hear what you say is closer to identifying your generation. Now, thank you for tuning in and join me next time.